Hello, fellow flight instructors. My name is Tim, and I could use your advice. You see, I'm a new flight instructor, and I know there are four forces acting on an airplane in flight, but I'm not so sure I know what forces are acting on a new student pilot while he or she is learning to fly.
Maybe it's motivation. The student has always dreamt of flying.
Well, motivation is key, and it is almost impossible to teach an unmotivated student to fly and fly safely.
That's true, but I'm sure there must be other factors to consider.
I wonder why my motivated student isn't booking flight lessons more often.
Well, Tim, holding down a good paying job in order to afford flying, and quite possibly attending to family obligations, could be limiting the time he or she has available for training.
My student keeps making excuses for every bad landing he makes. He has even blamed me for his poor airmanship.
Your student seems to be displaying classic defense mechanisms. Tim, you remember memorizing all those confusing defense mechanisms before you took your initial Cfi practical, don't you?
Okay, this little talk has really helped me put this flight instructing job into perspective. Now that I understand the factors that might be holding my student back, I can help my student deal with some of these issues. And I'll show a lot more understanding and empathy regarding issues I can't help with.
That's right, Tim. We flight instructors must always put the student first. It's very important to accept the student as they are. After all, we all come along with some baggage.
I see your point, and I've created a chart displaying the four forces of flight instruction to help make sense of the forces acting on my students. Hey, Tim again. I'd like you to meet my mentor, instructor, Dave. Dave has nearly 50 years of experience as a flight instructor. I often rely on Dave to have the best solutions to any of my CFI dilemmas. It sure is helpful to have a more experienced CFI like Dave as a mentor I can rely on.
Hi folks, Dave here. Tim is doing a great job as a newly minted CFI. He really has a passion for flying. I'd like to think that he got it from me. Tim explained to me that he is presenting this flight instructor review course and has asked me to talk to you about professionalism. Professionalism by definition is, well, it's hard to define. But I can tell you, you know it when you see it. So, I put together some of my ideas for Tim of what I believe professionalism is all about. I'll see you later in the course. Dave.
Professionalism. Responsibility. Setting the example. Emphasizing safety. Providing learning experiences. Effective communication. Enhancing motivation. Preparation. Student first, and professional development. Early in my training, Dave set the example for me, and a good example too. I wonder if he knew how intently I was observing his every move. Now I try my best to set a great example for my students, and now I wonder if they are watching my every move.
Yes, Tim, I knew full well you were watching what I did. and how I did it. I considered it part of the learning experience. And now your students are keeping close tabs on your behavior, so behave yourself. Tim.
Here's a little poem I learned in grade school. It has stuck in my memory all these years. Neither written word nor moral plea can teach young hearts what they can be, nor all the books upon the shelves, but what the teachers are themselves. Appearance matters. Your personal attire, grooming, hygiene, and posture will be noticed by your students. Your students will, initially, like it or not, base their opinion of your competence on subtle or not so subtle cues they perceive from your appearance, at least until they experience your performance as an instructor. Attitude matters. Students will quickly detect if you display a cavalier attitude towards safety, flight instruction, or their personal goals. Professionalism matters. Your strict adherence to checklists, procedures, and regulations will be emulated by your students. So will any tendency toward carelessness. Students learn from your actions as well as your words. Acceptance matters. Students won't care about how much you know unless they know how much you care. Well, while you folks are busy taking this course, I slipped off to Jamaica for a short vacation. So, from Montego Bay, I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about safety. As Dave always said, safety is no accident. Hazard recognition and risk assessment are the means by which we mitigate total risk. Hazards include the aircraft, the pilot and crew, the environment, and external factors like Aunt Mildred yapping away constantly in the rear seat during critical phases of flight. During a recent takeoff roll, she said, "I wish you wouldn't go down this runway so fast, Tim." I don't think she really understands how this all works. She certainly doesn't understand the concept of sterile cockpit. Aeronautical decision-making, the systematic approach to the mental process used by pilots to consistently determine the best course of action in response to a given set of circumstances. Given a situation, one should consider their options, choose the best option, act on that option, and then evaluate the results. We'll look at the PAVE, DECIDE, 5 Ps, I'm safe, and hazardous thought doctrines, as spelled out by the FAA. Teach students to use mental checklists. It's all part of the aeronautical decision-making process. Students should understand the PAVE checklist. PAVE, Personal Minimums Checklist. The pilot. What's my experience? How recently have I flown in certain conditions? And my physical condition. More about that in the I'm Safe checklist. Should consider the aircraft. What are my fuel reserves? How much experience do I have in this aircraft or type of aircraft? Have I considered the POH aircraft performance charts? How is my aircraft equipped, and is it suited for this mission? The environment. What are the conditions at my destination and departure airports? The weather in general en route. And what are my conditions considering VFR or IFR weather-wise? Should also consider external pressures. Trip planning. Have I considered possible diversion or cancellation? Have I made alternate plans? And what personal equipment should I bring along? What might I need? The Decide checklist. Detect the fact that a change has occurred. Estimate the need to counter or react to the change. Choose a desirable outcome for the success of the flight. Identify actions which could successfully control a change. Do the necessary action to adapt that change. Evaluate the effect of the change. The I'm Safe checklist. Illness. Do I have any symptoms? Medication. Have I been taking prescription or over-the-counter drugs? Stress. Am I under psychological pressure from the job? Am I worried about financial matters, health problems, or family discord? Fatigue. Am I tired or not adequately rested? Eating. Am I adequately nourished? Alcohol. Have I been drinking within 8 hours? Within 24 hours? By law, I cannot have an alcohol blood content of more than 0.04% per 9117. Before you climb into a cockpit, that might be a great time to do a little self-assessment about your attitude and your students' attitude. Are you having any hazardous thoughts? Hazardous thoughts lead to at-risk behaviors. Consider anti-authority, invulnerability, impulsivity, macho, and resignation. The antidotes for each of these will be expressed and listed on the following pages. As a flight instructor, you must operate by a defined set of priorities. Put simply, fly and teach. Not teach and fly. Flying is not a video game. There's no pause button. So aviate, navigate, communicate, and then teach. Always fly the airplane, even when the student has the controls. Day 1, Lesson 1 with a new student. Teach them positive exchange of controls the right way. 3 steps. You have the controls. I have the controls. You have the controls. Don't let them get away with doing it the wrong way, as in, I've got it. No, I've got it. Who's got it? I thought you had it. I've about had it, and you're going to get it. Whoa! Where'd he come from? Scan for traffic. Glance at instruments and charts. Don't fixate inside. Look outside, as well as inside. Use an effective scan of 10-degree increments and 3 seconds per interval. Turn on those lights and be seen. And when possible and available, use flight following radar services. Teach runway incursion avoidance with extra emphasis. Next, we'll discuss sterile cockpit, cockpit workload, head downtime, distractions, communications, wrong radio frequencies, unfamiliar airports, hold short instructions, lasso, line up and wait, and hotspots. Sterile cockpit. So, what exactly is a sterile cockpit rule? The sterile cockpit rule is an FAA regulation requiring pilots to refrain from non-essential activities during critical phases of flight. The FAA imposed the rule in 1981 after reviewing a series of accidents. The common thread to the accidents were flight crews distracted from flying by non-essential conversations and activities during critical phases of flight. Oh, what does the technical speak in FAR 121.542 and 135.100 really mean? Simple. Pilots and flight crews were talking smack or taking care of personal or company stuff when they were supposed to be flying the aircraft. Cockpit workload, head down time. Runways are sacred ground. Now, EFBs are great. They provide extra situational awareness, traffic, airport diagrams, weather, moving maps, etc. But while on the move during taxi operations, it's important to be heads up. Pilots must understand that the symptoms and signs of hypoxia are as varied and individual as the person experiencing them. No matter what the cause or type of hypoxia you are experiencing, the signs and symptoms and the effects on your flying skills are basically the same. Hypoxia is easy to succumb to because the human body doesn't have an effective warning system against the threat. Many accidents and some incidents are officially attributed to the pilot's inability to detect hypoxic conditions, which results in the pilot becoming unsafe because of compromised skills and judgment. The most effective way to prevent hypoxia is through education and experience. Pilots should be trained in the proper use and care of their pressurization systems and supplemental oxygen equipment. Pilots can get this experience by participating in a formal aviation physiology course. The FAA Civil Aerospace Medical Institute, located at the Mike Maroney Aeronautical Center in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, offers this training free of charge to all aviators who are at least 18 years old and have a current medical certificate. Hypoxia is a constant and dangerous companion while flying. The insidious nature of hypoxia means that you must constantly be suspicious of how you and your passengers feel. Once hypoxia is recognized, quick and decisive action means recovery is only seconds away. The key then to flying safely at altitude is to be able to identify the flight condition in which you may become hypoxic, recognize your personal hypoxia symptoms, and to recover from hypoxia before you've gone beyond your ability or desire to help yourself. There is nothing magic about preventing hypoxia. Fly a well-maintained pressurized airplane, or fly at an altitude where oxygen is not required.
numerous occupations necessitate that their employees conduct shift work. Businesses are just now beginning to redefine what is considered appropriate work limits aimed at reducing fatigue on the job. In aviation, commercial pilots are familiar with working alternate time periods while factoring in the crossing of multiple time zones and changes in work schedule. However, it must be realized that any pilot that is fatigued before flight and then flies is subject to the same dangers as the commercial pilot flying long legs over multiple time zones. It's important to recognize that employees who work shifts may be affected by both short-term and long-term fatigue. Shift workers subject themselves to increased risk of lowered alertness and reduced performance capacity, especially during the first few days following a shift change. Because of the natural tendency for humans to want to extend the day, it appears that it is better to shift forward in a time change or move clockwise when changing to a new shift. Short-term fatigue, also known as acute fatigue, is typically experienced at the end of a long, hard day. While long-term fatigue, also referred to as chronic fatigue, develops over a period of time, it can sneak up on you and it has serious physiological and psychological effects. Fatigue is something that affects everyone, particularly those in the aviation community. A NASA study of regional airline pilots found that 89% rated fatigue as a moderate to serious concern. 88% say that fatigue is a common occurrence, and 86% of regional airline pilots report that they have not received any training from their companies on the topic of fatigue. Here are some observable effects of fatigue. Loss of appetite. Weight loss. Insomnia. Depression. Irritability.
Enough of this time. And go to
slurred speech.
I'm sorry, I can't get my mouth to work right today at all.
Apathy. Physical and emotional isolation from others. Decreased alertness and attention. Those factors that affect one's tolerance to fatigue can be divided into three categories: individual, environmental, and operational. Individual fatigue tolerance factors are those features that are very specific to each person. Individual fatigue takes into account poor physical fitness, poor sleeping habits, improper diet and inadequate nutrition, dehydration, excessive body weight, drug or alcohol use, use of medications, non-prescription and prescription, excessive caffeine consumption and use of tobacco. Environmental fatigue tolerance factors involve those aspects that can affect the individual in their immediate surroundings. Environmental fatigue is caused by family, work environment, bad weather during flight, noise, vibration, G-forces, high and low ambient temperatures, and low humidity. The last fatigue tolerance factor is operational. Operational factors include the type of work performed and when it is performed. Examples of operational fatigue include heavy work schedule, multi-time zone operations, shift work, night operations. Obviously, there are many factors that can affect one's susceptibility for fatigue. The major causes of fatigue are emphasized by sleep loss, work schedules, circadian rhythm disruptions, recreational or extracurricular activity. During sleep, the physiological and psychological functions of the body get refreshed. Some very interesting but basic concepts have been derived from sleep research studies which are useful when learning to limit personal fatigue. Sleep is as necessary as food and water. Humans require about 7 to 8 hours of sleep each day. Your personal sleep requirements may vary, and the amount and quality of sleep you get is likely to change throughout your lifetime. Because of these changes, people tend to underestimate their sleep requirements. Sleeping fewer hours per day than what is required results in sleep loss or a sleep deficit. This loss is cumulative and results in sleep debt. However, to successfully recover, a person does not have to sleep the same number of hours that were originally lost. The most notable recovery feature from sleep debt is an increased depth of sleep rather than an increased duration. As one might imagine, there are several causes that contribute to sleep loss. They include circadian rhythm disruptions, sleep disorders, use or abuse of alcohol and drugs, excessive consumption of caffeine, bad sleeping habits, an uncomfortable sleeping environment, use of sleep aids. Over time and with age, nighttime sleep becomes shorter, lighter, and more disturbed, with more awakenings. Regardless of the cause for sleep loss, the physiological effect is fatigue. Some normal daily activities may disrupt normal circadian rhythms, which may lead to sleep loss and fatigue. Circadian rhythm is defined as a biological cycle of approximately 25 hours. This rhythm determines the physiological behavior or activity levels of all body functions, the succession of day and night, changes in ambient illumination, the timing of meals, as well as physical and social activities all affect the circadian rhythms of the body. As a pilot, the greatest threat to your circadian rhythms is flying through multiple time zones. A rule of thumb for time adaptation is this. For every 1 hour of change, 1 day is required for adaptation, with complete adaptation taking at least 3 full days. It is easier to adapt to time changes for westbound flights because it involves extending the workday, rather than eastbound flights where the day is shortened. Since everyone is physiologically different, factors affecting adaptation rates will vary with each individual. Vacations, social events, and recreational activities tend to disrupt normal sleep habits and circadian rhythms. As a result, we tend to overestimate our energy levels during these functions. The fatigue problem begins when we are required to return to our routine schedule after participating in such activities. So how does fatigue affect performance in the flying environment? Persons suffering from fatigue are more apt to demonstrate these symptoms: channelized attention, poor judgment, slowed reaction time, inattention, ease of distraction, technical errors resulting in task saturation. Fatigue is a safety of flight issue. It's important that you learn how to recognize it, deal with it, and know the preventive methods needed to reduce fatigue, starting with good physical fitness, adequate food and sleep, adequate rest and relaxation periods. Under normal flying conditions, you may be able to handle any situation or solve any problem that develops. The concern is how you react to an in-flight emergency or a highly intense period of stress when fatigue is present.
Hey, do you have the report ready yet?
Whoa, man, back off. It's not even due till tomorrow. God.
Whoa, calm down. I'm just checking the status of the report. Is everything okay?
Man, I'm sorry. I'm just tired. I haven't had enough sleep in the last couple of nights. It's okay.
So why haven't you been getting enough sleep?
The Federal Aviation Administration requires pilots to have at least 8 hours of rest in a 24-hour period. This may or may not be enough to recover fully. You're your own advocate. Research shows that pilots are poor judges of their own fatigue level. A family member,
Well, you're not going to fly today, are you?
a good friend,
Man, you look beat. Should you be flying today?
or another crew member may be able to assess your level of fatigue better than you can. Get someone else's input before putting yourself behind the controls. As a review, fatigue is defined as a state of diminished physical or mental efficiency. Pilots and crew members may be affected by both short-term and long-term fatigue. Some observable effects of fatigue are loss of appetite, weight loss, insomnia, depression, irritability, slurred speech, apathy, physical and emotional isolation, decreased alertness and attention. The factors that affect tolerance to fatigue are individual, those that are specific to each person, environmental, those that can affect the individual in their immediate surroundings, and operational, factors from the type of work performed and when it's performed. The major causes of fatigue are sleep loss, work schedules, circadian rhythm disruptions, recreational or extracurricular activity. The unfavorable effects of fatigue on flying skills are channelized attention, poor judgment, slowed reaction time, inattention, ease of distraction, task saturation. Pilots are poor judges of their own fatigue level. A family member, a good friend, or another crew member may be able to assess your level of fatigue better than you can.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take your flight today. You go home and get some rest.
Get someone else's input before putting yourself behind the controls. Fatigue is something that can be prevented by taking appropriate preemptive measures. Plan to get enough sleep. Do what you need to do to ensure quality sleep, even if that means wearing earplugs and an eye mask. Eat well and exercise. Reducing your chance for fatigue potentially reduces costly errors.
What a party, huh? I'm so glad it's not every day you turn 50. I don't think I could handle it.
I know I couldn't.
Can you believe all those barbecue ribs? That slab was enough to feed an army. I thought for sure you would stop eating after the 4th serving.
Yeah, it was too good last night. I couldn't stop.
Same goes for the salad and beer, right?
Do we have to talk about food right now?
Are you okay?
My stomach doesn't feel very good.
I've got something that'll fix you up. My doctor gave me some motion sickness tablets, and they do the trick for me. Perhaps they'll help you.
When trying to decide if it's okay to take a particular medication, every pilot should ask a follow-up question. Is it okay for me to fly while taking this medicine? Just like any decision a pilot would make about the weather or avionic equipment, one should know all the facts before attempting to answer such questions. Every pilot should have a separate checklist to use when thinking about taking medication prior to flight. Three basic questions need answering. 1. What is the underlying condition being treated? 2. What type of adverse reactions or side effects are possible when taking such medication? 3. What is the potential for adverse reactions to the medication? Let's look at each question independently. First, one should consider the underlying condition being treated. What will be the consequences if the medication doesn't work, or if it wears off during flight? A good general rule to follow is not to fly if one must depend on medication to keep the flight safe. Whether a condition goes treated or untreated, a pilot should wait until the condition improves before trying to fly. It's not worth the risk of your life or others.
Hey, Frank, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to reschedule because this medicine that I'm on, I don't think it's gonna be safe to fly.
Secondly, be cognizant of one's potential reaction to medication. Every person has a unique biological makeup. While most people are not likely to experience extreme allergic reactions when taking medicines, the potential for it certainly exists. Consequently, a pilot should never fly after taking any medication that has not been taken before. Flying in an aircraft with passengers is not the time to learn that one has an unexpected or allergic reaction to medication. Third, a pilot taking medication should consider the potential for adverse reactions or side effects. Medicine labels should be carefully read prior to taking the medicine. Pilots should be aware of potential side effects, and if label information isn't accessible, a pilot should not fly while taking the medication. Key words to look for on medication labels include dizziness, drowsiness, or visual disturbance. If these types of side effects are listed, or if the label contains a warning about operating heavy machinery or driving a motor vehicle, then a pilot should not fly while taking the medication. Even if a pilot has taken a particular medicine in the past without having side effects, that's not to say the pilot is immune from such effects in the future. Side effects from taking medication can occur at any time. Because of this, pilots should not fly if a medication lists any of these known side effects. When a pilot's treating physician prescribes a medication, the pilot should ask about possible side effects and about the safety of using the medication while flying. Since most physicians' patients are not pilots, they are not aware of a pilot's special needs when prescribing medication. It's a pilot's responsibility to learn about the condition being treated. It's perfectly acceptable for a pilot to ask their physician to contact their aviation medical examiner, or AME, to discuss implications of flying while taking the prescribed medication. Pharmacists are another valuable resource to pilots. When getting a prescription filled, a pilot should let the pharmacist know that they hold a current pilot certification. As a result, the pharmacist can provide supplemental information about possible side effects. A pilot's physician, pharmacist, and aviation medical examiner are ideal resources when there is uncertainty about one's medical condition and prescribed medication. If a pilot opts to take over-the-counter medications, here are some helpful guidelines. Read and follow the label directions. If the label warns of significant side effects, do not fly after taking the medication. Wait until at least 2 dosing intervals have passed. For example, if the directions say to take the medication every 6 hours, wait until at least 12 hours after the last dose to fly. Remember, a pilot should not fly if the underlying condition being treated would make one unsafe if the medication fails to work. Never fly after taking a new medication for the first time. Similar to drinking alcohol, medications may impair one's ability to fly, even though one feels fine.
Yeah, I'm calling about this medication that I've got prescribed. It's diphenhydramine.
Conceivably, pilots at one time or another will be confronted with a situation in which a decision will need to be made about flying with a medical condition. As observed, whether a pilot opts to take medication or not, the flight should be delayed until the health condition is cleared or significantly improved.
Hey, yeah, listen, I'm not feeling that well, and I'm taking some medication. I don't think I'm gonna be able to fly.
If an ongoing condition persists, something that is chronic, a pilot should discuss the condition and treatment with a physician, an AME, and a pharmacist. Decisions can be based on their collective advice. If a pilot encounters a medical condition that is uncomfortable, but that does not impair one's flying ability, and the need to get somewhere is very important, a pilot can take over-the-counter medications or prescription medications based on guidance from a physician, an AME, and a pharmacist.
I'm sorry I'm late. I had some unexpected errands to run.
Wow, man, what happened to you?
Just some incident with some poison ivy is all. I got some other issues.
Are you gonna be okay to fly?
Oh yeah, I'm not taking any medicine. I can wait until we get there to do that. And got my calamine lotion, that'll tide us through.
Deciding to take or decline medication prior to flight is dependent upon a pilot using common sense. If flight safety is jeopardized in any way, a pilot should delay the flight until the condition improves. Remember that physicians, aviation medical examiners, and pharmacists are there to help. Be sure to contact them about any questions concerning medications and its possible side effects.
Scuba diving requires breathing air under increased atmospheric pressure. Under these conditions, the amount of nitrogen stored in the body increases. Enough time should be allowed to eliminate the excess nitrogen stored in the body. Cami recommends 24 hours between scuba diving and flying. The following steps should be taken if there is a suspected case of decompression sickness. If available, go on 100% oxygen immediately. If possible, minimize movement of the affected part of the body. Declare an emergency and land as soon as possible. Even if symptoms disappear, land and seek qualified medical attention. Continue to breathe 100% oxygen if possible. After landing, seek medical assistance from an FAA aviation medical examiner, a military flight surgeon, or a hyperbaric medicine specialist. Not all physicians are familiar with the handling of decompression sickness cases. Be your own advocate. Medical treatment may involve the use of a hyperbaric chamber, also known as a dive or compression chamber, operated by specially trained personnel. It is important to remember that decompression sickness can occur after you've returned to ground level. Familiarize yourself with your local aviation medical examiner and the availability of a hyperbaric chamber in your area of operations. To obtain information on hyperbaric facilities to treat decompression sickness emergencies, contact the Divers Alert Network, or DAN. Decompression sickness, also referred to as DCS, occurs when the body is exposed to a decreased barometric pressure and the nitrogen dissolved in the body comes out of solution and forms bubbles. There are 4 types of DCS: the bends, pain localized in large joints; skin manifestations, tingling, itching, and cold or warm skin sensation; the chokes, a deep burning chest pain aggravated by breathing; neurological manifestations, headache, visual disturbances, unexplained fatigue, muscle weakness, or paralysis. The factors that make you more susceptible to developing decompression sickness: exposure to high altitude, repetitive exposure to altitudes above 18,000 feet, high rate of ascent, prolonged time at altitude, age, previous injury, low ambient temperature, overweight, physical activity in flight, alcohol use, scuba diving before flying. If you suspect a possible case of decompression sickness, if available, go on 100% oxygen immediately. If possible, minimize the movement of the affected part of the body. Declare an emergency and land the aircraft as soon as possible. Even if your symptoms disappear, land and seek qualified medical attention. Continue to breathe 100% oxygen if possible. Remember that any time you fly above 18,000 feet in an unpressurized aircraft or experience a rapid decompression, you are at risk of developing decompression sickness. So be prepared for the unexpected.
I am sorry, Will Robinson. I am afraid I goofed.
Effective communication. How do you measure communication? Anybody? No ideas. Yes, sir. Clarity. All right. Anybody else? Response. I like to think that the message is received and understood. Sometimes there's a difference between those two. They got the message, but they didn't understand what it was. It also helps us to increase our safety level and our confidence. And if you've ever had a hard time communicating with a controller, hasn't it sort of increased your workload because you're going back and forth and you're not getting through to them? Or maybe they're not getting through to you, as the case may be. So here we have a situation. Obviously, the pilot had an idea that he wanted to get some fuel. The controller had a slightly different viewpoint. Was this an effective communication? Rhetorical point. Of course it wasn't.
Marshal traffic, Cessna 986 Bravo Charlie, we're 4,600, sorry, make that 3,600 feet. We'll be landing on runway 9, heading down to 2,500 to fly over the field and then enter the downwind left. Looks like we're on a left downwind here, and we're 10 north. Anyone in the pattern there? Let us know. Cessna 6 Bravo Charlie. Marshal traffic.
I'm exhausted. I don't know about the rest of you, but as we like to say, nobody's ever completely worthless. They can always serve as a bad example. So that's what you have with this pilot. He's not trying to cause a problem here, but through difficulty, he's just not able to put it all together. So obviously, we want to be prepared before we talk. It increases your confidence. Did our friend here sound confident? No, not a bit. He was scared to death. Now, there's two ways you can think about communication. Some people talk to think. We'll hear some of them on the radio. They're kind of formulating the words, but the thought process hasn't quite caught up to all of that. We would say that a better way to do it is to think first and then talk. Seems perfectly obvious. By the way, this approach to communications, people do communicate in different ways. And in business, you will have some people who are talk to think. I fall into that category. And if I'm talking to a think to talk person, sometimes we don't get quite on the same wavelength. I'm talking to them, and they're sitting there not doing anything. They're thinking, they're processing, but they're not doing anything. Just a thought for you to consider as you go into business. Now, I believe it was Benjamin Franklin that said that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and they ought to be used in about that proportion.
Traffic 415 Charlie up on the 45 for 5 right traffic.
Ready traffic, Cessna 5 to Tango, final 5.
Bravo's down clear, runway 5, Frederick.
Traffic, Cessna 75 Hotel is on a 5 mile 45 for runway 5, Frederick.
Traffic, Skyhawk 6670 telephone at 6.5 mile 45 to the right downwind of 5, Frederick.
Frederick traffic, helicopter 42 uniform is turning left base, left side, 05, Frederick.
Traffic 415 Charlie Alpha on the downwind for right traffic, runway 5.
Frederick traffic, anybody in the pattern at the moment of Frederick?
We don't make this stuff up, folks. That is how it actually happens on a Saturday morning. Now, what could we learn from this? 2 ears, 1 mouth. That last, as you could tell, the frequency is pretty congested. This guy's taking up some pretty valuable airtime. We've got a lot of airplanes moving around there, and he wasn't paying attention. So people like to hear themselves talk. This is absolutely the worst place to be doing it. Now, we talk a lot about expectation, all right? And sometimes we can be a little biased in things that we hear. So here we have a circumstance with two parallel runways. We've got the FBO right down here, and we're thinking that we're probably going to get runway 17 right. Now, that makes perfect sense to me, and I would hope that it would make sense to you. But listen here.
Baron 563 Lima, taxi to runway 17 left.
Taxi to runway 17 right, Baron 563 Lima.
Baron 563 Lima, runway 17 right is NOTAM closed for construction. Taxi to runway 17 left, that's 17 left via taxiways Bravo and Echo.
Has anybody ever had a problem where they were expecting one thing and got something completely different? I've had it happen a time or two, and you got to be really careful with that because you can get yourself into, shall we say, an unexpected situation. Obviously, you've heard this one before. There are a bunch of people whose names end in I that allow us to do a lot of the things that we have to do. What has every flight instructor in the world told you in terms of how the priorities should be set? Aviate, navigate, and that's the last thing that you should be doing. And if you think about how all of this works, if you don't communicate, what's the worst thing that could happen, most likely? You might get a surprise, okay? Well, surprises in flying aren't always good, but it's usually not the end of the world unless you collide with somebody, all right? So we'll hold that one aside. That's fairly unusual, okay? So you might get a surprise, all right? Suppose you fail to navigate. What happens then? You'll go to some place that you haven't been before, and you'll make new friends, okay? So that's not altogether bad either, assuming you have enough fuel to do that. Which brings us to the last one. What happens if you fail to aviate? All kinds of bad things happen there. So that is the point of this little diatribe, even though we're talking about communications. The #1 cause of accident problems is distractions. You know, we talk about the accident chain and how the links get put together. It's because we weren't focusing on the main thing. So let's take a look at a few common errors that we might have. Ever heard somebody start a conversation before keying the microphone and you missed some pretty important stuff? I see some heads nodding up and down. Here's another one of my favorites right here. And say, well, we feel the need for speed.
Sturgis traffic, Cessna 125, Echo Foxtrot 5 miles north, overfly the field at 2,500 Sturgis.
Whew. Now that doesn't just happen on the pilot side. Anybody ever had a controller that had maybe a little too much coffee? Gave you a lot of information in a very short period of time? That's problematic. I was talking to a NATCA group here a while back, and I said, you know, we really like our communications slow and chunky. And one of them said, oh, you must be talking about the flight attendants we have these days. And I said, I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. I didn't say that, okay? That was somebody else. I'm just quoting. How many times have you been droning along, kind of minding your own business, even though you're on the frequency, and you missed the call? Or you heard somebody else get the call, and they weren't getting. I was flying up in the New England sector near Boston last month, and there was a GA pilot. It wasn't particularly bad weather, but he was. We were all in Class Bravo, and this guy missed 3 calls, and the controller's pretty busy. And finally, he says, 21 Kilo, you really need to listen up because we're very busy here, and I can't have you wandering off wherever you're going here. There was a long silence, and then 21 Kilo said, Roger. And you could tell he had gotten the message. How many times have you had airplanes with similar call signs and heard or been one of the ones who took the clearance for the other airplane? Okay? That happens once in a while, too, and it can be really interesting as to what happens. Or somebody takes your clearance. You've been cleared down to 4,000 feet, and the other guy says, well, why are you clearing me down to 4,000 feet? I'm at 270. No, listen up. And while we're talking about call signs, when is it okay to abbreviate the call sign? Washington Center, Bonanza 7236 Whiskey, 4,000. When should I start to abbreviate the call sign? After the controller abbreviates the call sign. If he comes back, 7236 Whiskey, Roanoke altimeter 3025, I got to say 7236 Whiskey. If he says 36 Whiskey, then I'm good to go. Okay, how do we say some of these altitudes? Top one. 4.5, right? No. How about 4,500? No, wrong again. There's one correct way. 4,500. This next one is a little tougher. You won't often get up there in your Cessna 150 too often, but if you did, maybe in the updraft of a thunderstorm, what would you say then, besides help? 10,500. The two altitudes that get messed up the most are 10,000 and 11,000. So good controllers and good pilots will put in the extra syllable there. So 10,500 or 10,000 if you're IFR is a very good way of doing it. Headings, you know how to say this one, right? 360. 360? No. 360. The last one, for most of us, we won't see airspeeds like this and have the airplane still holding together. We might hear a lot of screaming in the background, but the correct pronunciation of this would be 250 knots. Details and how we want to do these things, the phonetic alphabet, Quebec or Quebec, which is it? Quebec, sure. Victor or Victa. Victa, believe it or not. Most pilots use the word niner, even in normal conversation, like I'll meet you at 9 o'clock. Sounds cool, you know? But you don't hear too many of them say, well, I get off at 5 o'clock, or I'll see you at tree. The controllers will be using these kinds of communications because it cuts down on the miscommunication, if you will. It's okay. These are minor points. As far as the times that we get, I'm always confused about Zulu time. I'm always before, ahead, or behind, but that's the time that ATC will always use, okay? So if you know that's going to happen, you need to think about which time zone you're in, and whether it's daylight time or standard time, write it on your clipboard, so whatever they give you, then you've got it, okay? Oh, one other thing. I put this in big yellow points. Enunciate. Have you ever talked to somebody on the radio who wasn't exactly clear in how they were speaking, and they kind of slurred their words real quickly, and it was hard enough with the radio not being very good anyway? It's very important to enunciate clearly. You parents, you know who you are working on your kids to say things correctly. It's good to use the King's English. Okay, so how many times have you transmitted and not gotten any response whatsoever? I better see every hand in the room up, okay? If you hadn't, you're either an atrocious liar or you don't fly much. Squelch. What a wonderful term. When you were learning to fly, did any flight instructor really explain to you about squelch? Huh? Can somebody tell me about squelch? What is it? Uh-huh. Nobody wants to talk about squelch. All right. Short course on squelch. Really simple, and I'm going to teach you a little trick here on squelch. That's the knob that adjusts the sensitivity of the radio. If you have it adjusted too low, it's not sensitive enough, you won't hear anything even though the transmission site is directly below your airplane. What you want to do is to turn the knob until you hear a and then you back it off just enough so that the background noise goes away. You've now adjusted the radio properly. Now, one of the things, if you fly a different airplane a lot, if you're a renter pilot or in a club airplane, you'll find people like to get in and they like to move things around. And guess what? It would sure be a good idea that we make sure that all the communications gear is set up the way you like it to have it. Now, a trick. We're talking about radio sensitivity. We're coming into a high-density airspace, Class Bravo. We're landing at an airport. We really want to get the ATIS information. And guess what? We can't receive it because we're too far out. And we know that when we get another 20 miles in, we're going to be handed off to approach control. They're going to want to know what the ATIS is, and the frequency is going to get really, really busy. What you could do is to disable the squelch or turn the sensitivity up so that you get the background noise, but then you can hear the ATIS frequency and talking typically 20 to 30 miles farther out. Yeah, you got the background noise, but you can still hear what's going on. I use this constantly when I'm going into a busy area, and it allows me to be heads up that much sooner. This would seem absolutely obvious, but I've gotten into an airplane, kind of fumbled around a little bit, and then found out either somebody had turned the radio down. And you know, the folks who design the radios, they like to not put a marker on the knob as to where the audio is. You know, it used to be they were painted in silver or white, but now it's just cool to be one color, black. And so I have no idea where that thing is set. Same way on my headset. I can have the radio cranked up all the way. If I've got my headset turned down, the possibilities are endless. This one would seem also to be obvious. When you're dealing with 720 channels, is it possible to be a couple of decimal points off? Sure. Ever tuned the wrong frequency? Gave them your spiel and nobody was there? Oh, sure. And this is one of my favorite, is it's selected on the COM panel. Here's the COM panel, and I like to call this the snake pit because there are so many buttons on it. Have you ever had a problem where you got into the airplane and nothing worked? Who's had that problem? Particularly if it's a rental aircraft or a club airplane, and invariably the fool that was in you before was listening to the ball game, had the ADF cranked up, and nothing else is working. Okay? So it's very important when you get in to get this all set up. Are we on COM 1 or are we on COM 2? This is a very good panel. It's designed by PS Engineering. If I push this button here, I can monitor COM 2. I won't be transmitting on COM 2. Maybe I'm on ATC here, and I'm going to push this one so I can listen to the ATIS after disabling the squelch so I can get it farther ahead. But then they say, OK, go ahead and change frequencies. And I look up and say, OK, good, I'm ready to go on COM 2, and I haven't pushed this button. Guess what? Approach is going to say, you're still on approach control frequency. I just told you to contact the tower. Oh. Marker beacons. How many of you have taken somebody flying on their first flight, and you've flown over a middle marker or an outer marker at altitude, and what do you hear? Beep, beep, beep. And the person next to you, their eyes get this big. It's, oh, God, something bad is happening. It's bad enough with the outer marker. If you get to the middle marker, it's a higher pitch and it's going faster. Something really bad is about to happen. You might think about disabling the marker beacons. However, if you're flying IFR and you need to hear those, let's make sure that's engaged. The mute button over here also on the marker beacons, you're flying down the ILS and the tone is going off and the controller's ribbling at you. You'd like to hear that. You know where you are at this point. Reach over and hit the mute button. It all comes down to which button needs to be pushed at which time. So treat the COM panel like an absolute snake pit. Still other problems? Stuck microphones? Anybody ever been on the frequency when there's been a stuck mic? Sometimes it can be quite entertaining, can't it? You hear people say all kinds of things that they ordinarily wouldn't think. Now in Washington, an open microphone is just an absolute invitation for the media to have a field day with you, and people are telling jokes and so on and so forth. In our business, that happens, but it also tends to block up the entire frequency. On the newer radios, how do we know if we're transmitting? Usually we'll get a little TX next to the frequency, which tells us that. So when you're keying the mic or your mic button, it's always a good idea just to kind of scan over. Most of the time you'll see absolutely nothing, and once it'll be you that has the hot mic, and that wouldn't be the time to be telling jokes. Did I mention the wrong frequency before? I think I did. That's very important. And then finally, the ever popular, well, the jack wasn't quite pushed in all the way. I can't hear, I can't talk, I can't do both, I can't do one or the other. Okay, quiz time. Lost comm, what's the transponder squawk? 7600 is right. Okay, this is one we don't want to have, but hijack code? 7500. If you were unable to get to the transponder, could you say that one verbally to the controller? Absolutely. You could say, Washington approach, transponder 7500. and they would know that something is going on. You might get a real nice close-up look at an F-16 at some point. Anything else? Other emergencies? 7700 are ever popular. Okay, so here we have a circumstance. See what you think. We have to look carefully sometimes when they call traffic. The red doesn't show up quite so well, but you get the idea. Flight service. Flight service is really important for us in general aviation. This is our dispatch system. A lot of people, they think, well, once they got their instrument rating and so forth, I don't need to talk to flight service. Nothing could be further from the truth. Flight service can be a tremendous source of information for you. Obviously, we use it to get a pre-flight briefing, or we'll get our briefing via computer. But then, how many of you go through all of the NOTAMs and read them and understand them? That's what I thought. We're working on a project with the FAA right now to get the length of NOTAM shortened down to maybe only 20 pages for a 50-mile flight. And so that's important. TFRs, likewise. Maybe you don't use them for a pre-flight briefing. This is critical. In-flight updates. We see a tremendous number of accidents, weather-related accidents, where there is no record of contact once the airplane launched. They didn't get any updates on the weather. And one thing that you can be sure about with the weather is that it's going to change. Absolutely. Here's how you get to in-flight weather, the best kind. The call sign is Flight Watch. If you want to talk and file a flight plan, then you would be talking to Raleigh Radio. What's the common frequency for Flight Watch? 1220, exactly. And there's the correct way to do that because that's a common frequency. You're flying along, you would say, if you knew which Flight Watch it was, you can call them by name. I seldom know where I am, so all I do is, I'm 1,000 miles from wherever my destination is. That's the disadvantage of GPS these days. But you would say, Flight Watch, Bonanza 7236 Whiskey, 20 west of Raleigh, 5,500. The appropriate Flight Watch then knows where you are and which transmitter to come back to you on, because they may be covering an area of several thousand square miles. All right? So that's the correct way of doing that. On radio, we can use 122 nothing and go from there. Remote communications, this is important. A lot of people don't know how to get a hold of Flight Watch if it's not a direct communications. Here we have an RCO right here, and this would be the frequency, and you would tell them that you are receiving Norman on 122.15 because the Flight Watch specialist has literally dozens and dozens of frequencies to respond. If you have a duplex frequency, now the R isn't for you. You will transmit on the R. They're listening on that, and you'll have to turn up the volume on this side and punch the button so you can hear their response. Sounds very simple. You have to try it a time or two to see how it works. Automated weather, pretty good. The correct term is 1-minute weather. When we call in on approach, you sometimes get something like this. In fact, I don't even have a rental car, let alone a hotel. How many times have you heard people say, I have the numbers? That's not the right way of doing it. Which numbers do you have, by the way? I'm not sure which numbers you're talking about. The controller would like to know specifically. The correct way is to use the code with information Foxtrot or just simply with Foxtrot. VFR flight following, lots of benefits to it. How to request it. One thing we didn't say, but this is something that every flight instructor has told you from the beginning. Who are you calling, who you are, where you are, and what you want. Okay? Well, you can get into a circumstance in a very busy area where if you go through that litany, the controller's not going to be totally happy. So a better way, rather than saying Raleigh approach, Bonanza 7236 Whiskey, I'm about 20 miles west at 4,500. Now, I just used up about 10 seconds of airtime, and if he or she's busy moving people around, he's not going to be totally happy with me. As opposed to saying, Raleigh approach, Bonanza 7236 Whiskey, VFR request. He'll get back to you when he's ready and able. He may say, unable traffic advisories. Well, there's your answer right there. But this is a better, more professional way of dealing with it. When you want to stop, just tell him you want to stop. We'll go over to advisory frequency now, or thanks very much, we'd like to terminate radar service. And I'll be perfectly happy.
Where'd he come from?
We have a tendency, when we get into flight following, to think, okay, whew, I can kind of let down. I won't have to look outside as much. Nothing could be further from the truth if you are in VFR conditions. And if you're getting VFR flight following, VFR conditions probably apply. And when they call the traffic at 3 o'clock, that is relative to your track, not your heading. So if you've got a 20-degree correction angle from whatever heading you happen to be on, the controller's call is going to be 20 degrees off from wherever you are. Only two responses that you want to give when they call traffic for you, either traffic in sight or negative contact. Tally-ho sounds kind of exciting, but it's a little dated. PIREPs, very quickly, why are they great? How many times have you heard VFR not recommended, decided to go take a look, and it turned out to be a pretty good day? How many times have you had that happen? Okay? Wouldn't it be nice if somebody, or a lot of somebodies, had filed PIREPs and said, hey, it's pretty good out here. It's kind of bad over by the mountains, but here along the shore, everything looks great. Get that back into the system so other pilots can fly, and more importantly, that the National Weather Service can update their forecasts. How many times has the opposite happened? You were told the weather's going to be pretty good, and woo, it turned out not to be so good. Pretty important to file a PIREP. If you're too busy to be able to file that PIREP while you're in the heat of battle, when you get down on the ground, call flight service and give them the PIREP right then and there. We have a new course that just came out last month called Sky Spotter. Please take a look at it. I think you'll find it quite entertaining, and it'll tell you exactly what to do. Okay, we're getting close to the end here of time. There are 3 magic words that every pilot should know. One of them, say what? What might we say instead? Huh is not a good response. Say again. And if it's one of our controllers who likes to do things really fast, tell him to say it again slower, okay? He'll get the idea. If he has to repeat it 4 times, we've made our point. You didn't save any time by saying things fast. The same thing applies to us as pilots. I can almost tell a new pilot on the frequency because they're going through things just as fast as they can. Really good air traffic controllers will have a very measured pace. They will chunk the information so that people can follow it and so forth. The same thing applies to us. Number 2. Absolutely. Do you ever get standby from the controllers? All the time. They're busy with something that at the moment takes a higher priority. Remember what we said about our 3 priorities. There are going to be times when you're going to be busy with airplane. Tell the controller, stand by. Don't just throw that out there if you happen to be, fooling around with the GPS and are momentarily distracted. Probably the controller has something important. Last one, very important. Unable. Very important. And that applies to weather. It applies to trying to get somebody on a frequency and nobody's there. You go back to the prior frequency and say that. Since we are out of time, I want to jump ahead because I have a very good example of something here that I want you to see. And I think it'll be beneficial here. Go down just a little bit farther. This looks promising. Aha. Okay. We've talked about some things to do. Let's talk about some things that we ought not to do. And I think you know what's coming here.
Boston approach, Piper 77 uniform over the city of Brockton at about 2,500, and I wanted to see if maybe I could get clearance into your Class Bravo service area, so there I can do like a flyby for my company picnic, and Thompson Island out there, in the harbor.
What do you think his response is going to be from the controller? Unable. Exactly so, unable. Here's another one. We talked about, How about this one?
Omaha ground, Cessna 976 Bravo Papa, request taxi and some pattern work.
Are we talking to think, or are we thinking to talk here? We're talking to think. We haven't formulated our idea. This is a good one.
LA Center, Seneca 721 Alpha Papa, checking in level 8,000.
Well, we're checking in at 8,000. Now, when you leave that frequency, will you be checking out? It doesn't convey any useful information. Some people think it sounds pretty cool. To me, it conveys that you're an amateur. Here's another one, and you'll hear some airline people do it as well. We have a retired airline pilot that works for us who was a bit of a stickler, and he said if I ever heard any of my first officers use language like that, they'd be filing my jet plates when we got back to the hotel, and rather than doing other fun things. Here's another favorite one.
Miami Center Navajo 881 Hotel with you, level 6,000.
Well, I'm so glad you're with us, because we certainly wouldn't want you to be against us, okay? Once again, no useful information conveyed, kind of a, I don't know, funny thing. It just doesn't seem to add much. Here's one that you will hear at non-towered airports all the time.
Adrian traffic, Bonanza 12377, taking the active.
Well, don't take it far, because we're going to need it back shortly. There's another airplane on short final. You can say that you're departing whatever the runway is, taking the active. Well, gee, I don't know what active is. At non-towered airports, the active runway happens to be the one you're on, right? And finally, the one that has been so abused lately that it actually made top billing in that wonderful tome of the FAR AIM book. By the way, how many of you have a current copy? How many have legacy copies? It's okay. You can raise your hand, but this one just takes the case.
Traffic, Cirrus 963 Charlie David, 5 miles southwest inbound. All traffic, please advise.
If you heard when we did the opening sequence at Frederick and so on and so forth, if all the airplanes in the pattern advised him of where they were, even though they had already just done so, we'd have been 30 minutes with the frequency jammed up. So this is just a quick look at some of the things that is available. I would also like to ask you, instrument pilots, did most of you or all of you get a thunderstorm communicating with ATC disk here just recently? Okay. Air Safety Foundation just sent out a CD on talking to ATC with thunderstorms. This is a critical item, and if you fly IFR, you need to watch this disk. If you didn't get it in the mail, or a VFR pilot, you're just interested, you can go onto our website and take a look at the whole program. It runs about 45 minutes. The old story about the controller saying, well, my radar doesn't show much weather, is no longer true. Every air traffic control radar in this country, with just a couple of exceptions, shows weather, okay? And it can be a tremendous help to you when you're flying either IFR or VFR and getting flight following. This is an additional website on our website that you can go to get additional information. And I've already overstayed my welcome. We'll take just a couple of questions here, so if we can bring the lights up, we'll do that. Questions, anybody? Yes, sir.
When I was getting my instrument rating, I was taught to use the phrase with you at 5,000. And so what phrase has replaced that?
Nothing. Don't say with you. The proper check-in, and I'm not faulting you. There are a lot of flight instructors who teach the way they've been taught. Your flight instructor did exactly what he was taught. It was taught by her flight instructor prior to that, and so on and so forth. The proper way to talk to any particular center would be Miami Center, Bonanza 7236 Whiskey, 4000. That's all you have to say. They know you're with them, because you wouldn't be on the frequency otherwise, okay? Or checking in. They know you're checking in. That's why you're there. Okay. Any other questions? Well, great. You've been a wonderful audience. Thanks so much. This is AOPA Day. Please join us over at the big yellow tent just off here at about my 4 o'clock position. That has nothing to do with heading.
Okay, units, travel plans. I need to be in New York on Monday, LA on Tuesday, New York on Wednesday, LA on Thursday, New York on Friday. Got it? Got it. So you want to work here. What really makes you think you deserve a job here?
Well, sir, I think on my feet I'm good at figures and have a sharp mind.
Excellent. Can you start on Monday?
Yes, sir, absolutely, without hesitation.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And in conclusion, Jim, Bill, Bob, Call, Fred, Load, Dork, Ada, and Ted. Business is business. And as we all know, in order to get something done, you got to do something. In order to do something, we got to get to work. So let's get to work. Thank you for taking the meeting.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
This is Cactus 1539. Hit birds through lost thrust on both engines, returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Tower, stop your departures. Got emergency returning. It's 1529. He bird strike. He lost all engine. He lost the thrust in the engines. He's returning immediately.
Cactus 1529. Which engines?
He lost thrust in both engines. He said.
Got it.
Cactus 1529. We can get it for you. Do you want to try to land 1913?
We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson.
Showing 2760. Turn left 070.
070. Showing 2760.
Hey, Ground Delta 929, we're on Bravo short of Victor, and we just had that little corporate jet pull in front of us, and then another 7-5, and thought we were supposed to follow JetBlue, sir.
You what? What happened?
Well, the corporate jet came off the runway, and we had to stop.
808 Bravo Lima, you didn't follow it? 808 Bravo Lima?
808 Bravo Lima, you told us to follow the Embraer, and that's what we did.
You followed the Embraer? JetBlue 1069? Somebody didn't do something right. JetBlue 1069.
Yeah, we were sitting there waiting for the Delta to move, and then Delta said he was waiting for the corporate, so we continued on, and then corporate followed us, and then Delta was going to follow corporate.
Well, you can't just do. All right. See, this takes so much energy, guys. All right. Delta 929. Hang on a second, guys.
Okay, we're at Bravo short of Victor.
Yeah, right. Who's Bravo short of Victor?
Delta 929, sir.
You didn't even move yet, then. Who went out of sequence here? JetBlue 1069, you're behind a company A320?
And then we had to stop.
Hang on a second. JetBlue 1069, you behind a company A320?
Yes, sir.
I don't know how that happened. Just follow him. And 8 Bravo Lima, you're behind the JetBlue, so everybody did right. Delta 929, just follow the Hawker.
Okay, well, the Hawker's 2 planes in front of us.
Great. Delta 1869, you're behind the Hawker?
Correct.
JetBlue 1069, you got to just do what I asked, sir. Delta 929, follow the 75.
We can do that. 975, Delta 925.
Delta 1867, this probably screws you up, too. Where are you right now?
Yes, sir. We're number 2 on Bravo short of Victor.
You're on Bravo. Delta 929, you were on Bravo short of Victor.
That's affirmative, sir.
Yes. See, now I'm all screwed up. Jesus, JetBlue.
Steering side, Omega 403.
Right on front, and advise you unable to take taxiway Charlie Airbus 340-600.
You're unable to do everything, sir, that plane of yours, sir. Let me see. Yep, you can't go on Charlie. How nice. Go right on. Give way to the Delta jet off your right, sir. Okay, actually looks like he's clear. So you're right on. Go right on Victor, right on 13 left, and hold short of Zulu Echo, Iberia, okay?
Okay, right Victor 13 left, hold short Zulu Echo, Iberia 6252 heavy.
JetBlue 707, please don't follow Iberia. Just let him go left to right past you, and then go down uniform and follow the line.
JetBlue 707, Wilco, sir.
Thank you. American 1639, you're on Bravo short of Victor?
Affirmative.
Okay, JetBlue A320 off your right is going to go. You follow him.
Follow JetBlue. American 1639.
Singapore 25 Heavy, Echo to Bravo short of Victor.
Echo to Bravo short of Victor.
Evergreen.
Roger
Roger, Evergreen 645 Heavy.
Yeah, and call me when you're at Victor. I got to weed you into that alleyway somehow. Hey, DHL, you're blocking whiskey, aren't you?
Well, the 152 Heavy is blocking whiskey over here, and we're okay with the tower and roof clearance.
Yeah, I know. Evergreen 645. Whiskey's currently blocked, but Charlie Echo's available. So just so you know, my plan of action is to bring you in at Charlie Echo, okay?
Copy, Evergreen 645 Heavy.
All right, let's just make sure. Hopefully that's where you're really going to be going.
Q4 025 Heavy, Hotel short of Alpha.
JetBlue 707, I'm sorry. So where'd you say you were?
And, sir, we're holding short of Echo, sir.
Short of Echo on where?
At Alpha, sir.
JetBlue 707 you're on. Oh, you're the guy who came out of there. Okay, JetBlue 707, give way to your company off your right, then Echo to Bravo short of Victor.
Echo Bravo short of Victor, and we'll get ready to company JetBlue 707.
JetBlue 176, if you can't get in, let me know.
Roger, we'll check.
Thank you very much.
Ground, good evening, yes, Charles 208.
The Hotel short of Alpha.
Hotel short of Alpha was who?
Request please check.
Air France 011 Heavy, where are you?
10-10.
You coming out or you going in?
Coming out, Air France 1 Heavy.
Ground, good day. Ground, what's Air Canada going to do? Continue to hold short at Victor on Bravo.
No, is that Air France 7 Heavy?
Air France 011 Heavy, ready to push.
Air France 011 Heavy, if you want to push in the alleyway, that's call your ramp for that.
Okay, call the ramp. 11 Heavy.
Ground, United 8. Is Air Canada going to get off at Whiskey, or do you want us to go on to Alpha?
Those two JetBlues, can you guys get by Iberia or not yet? JetBlue 35, what's the problem?
Who do you want us to follow?
You're on Bravo, you're short of Victor Alpha, you're Beam the Iberian?
We're Beam Alitalia on the left there.
Beam Alitalia.
JetBlue 124.
Alright, just hang on. JetBlue 179?
Yes, sir, we're number 2 holding short of Victor Alpha on Bravo.
Hey, who's the first JetBlue on Bravo short of Victor Alpha?
35.
You're an outbound?
Yep.
Hey, you guys should come up here one day. JetBlue 35, I need you to pull it right up there and hold short of Victor for me.
No, you must be about some of your highest. We're right at Victor, 35.
Okay, you're at Victor. JetBlue 179, you're at Beam the Alitalia?
JetBlue 144 to Beam Iberia, short of Victor Alpha.
Alright, JetBlue 179, somebody stepped on you. You're the first one there, Beam Iberia?
No, sir, we're number 2. Number 2.
Who's the first one?
The first one is JetBlue 144. We're a Beam Iberia, short of Victor Alpha.
JetBlue 144, you an inbound or an outbound?
Inbound to Whiskey.
I told you to go where you are?
Exactly.
I did. Okay, so, well, go down to Victor. You guys should come up here one day. You'd enjoy it. You'd enjoy the show. Go straight ahead and hold short of Victor. I can't do anything else with you. And what's your numbers again?
It's JetBlue 144. We totally understand. You did the best you can. We'll go up short of Victor now, JetBlue 144.
Yeah, I'm going to move your company in the second in front of you. Once he clears, come up 13 left and hold short of Whiskey.
144, roger.
Yeah, come up 13 left and hold short of Whiskey, all right?
Okay, I understand. JetBlue 144. Behind company, we'll go on 13 left and short of Whiskey.
Yeah, back on the runway short of Whiskey. Alitalia 611 Heavy, make a left turn on a uniform and go around the horn. Follow the leader.
Roger, Alitalia 611, left on uniform, long way down.
JetBlue 35, follow Alitalia.
Oh, Alitalia, JetBlue 35.
Now, JetBlue 35, just to make sure, you're Bravo short of Victor, right?
Who's that for?
JetBlue 35, you're Bravo short of Victor, right?
Bravo short of Victor, behind Alitalia.
Good, you follow Alitalia. JetBlue 179, you're the second one. Follow your company ahead.
Follow the company ahead. JetBlue 179 will visit you at the duty free.
I wish I could. Not the one in front of you, but the one in front of him. The one in front of you is an arrival.
Sounds good. We'll follow the guy that's following the Air Italia.
Aircan 1121, follow the JetBlue off your left.
Aircan 1121.
JetBlue 97, follow Air Canada.
JetBlue 97, roger.
929, where are you?
Alpha, short of Echo.
Echo to Bravo, short of Whiskey, Delta 929.
All right, Alpha short of whiskey now, Delta 929.
You married that JetBlue that I put on 13 left. When you come back around, can you get in a whiskey?
JetBlue 144, I'm going to contact company right now and make sure it's empty.
Okay, sir. I thought you would have known by now.
You know what? They told us it was already empty, and then we went to almost turned in. We almost went nose to nose.
The United jet that's approaching whiskey, can you get in?
Yes, sir, after the guy ahead of me moves on.
Sir, you taxi into the ramp. The second JetBlue behind that United, who is that?
That's 606. We're cleared in Whiskey Alpha.
You're cleared in? Good. You taxi into the ramp. JetBlue 144, you're probably going to be cleared in. So, when you come around on the runway, let a United go in first. You'll see him, and then you follow him in. If that doesn't work, let me know. I'll put you somewhere else, short of Alpha somewhere.
All pay heed. The Lord Jehovah, has given unto you these 10 commandments for all to obey.